to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. My name is Aaron, and with me, as always, is Fredo and Dave. How are we doing, guys?
Doing good.
I'm doing well.
Is it good or well?
Well, he's doing well. I'm doing good.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that I had an assistant principal I worked with that always, kind of came down on people for, I don't know, is there is a proper. I think the proper is well, but I always say good is. I always say good.
I always tell people whenever they ask me about learning English, the beautiful thing about English is there's very few hard locked in rules. Unlike Spanish,
which is why so many kids fail English. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want to the English language. It's why it's so malleable. It absorbs words from other languages, and it's like not a big deal. We can do that. Every other language has academies or whatever, and take it all serious about this stuff.
I have two editors that I'd like to introduce you to, Fredo. they would beg to differ on this. So no, big news. First of all, in Saints land is that we're losing Thomas Morstead. Oh my goodness, that is.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about like. I love the meme that's going around. It's like, you want to know what makes New Orleans special? We're all up in our feelings about losing a punter. It's this guy, and the fact that he's going to, remain here as his home. He probably will go play for somewhere else, for some other team and just live, be here in the off season and everything. But
New Orleans was building a home, I want to say.
Yeah, but New Orleans has become his home, and the people have, accepted him as, But yeah, did you ever think you'd ever see a team just go nuts over a punter? And then what else? We started today. Was it started like free agency? Is that we started putting franchise tags on people? I saw Marcus Williams. We put one on.
Yeah.
So I just hate this time of year with football. It's when you don't want to get too emotionally attached to players, but you do. So
it's when the sausage gets made. The sausage that you're gonna see come fall every Sunday and sometimes Monday and every now and again Thursday. It gets made right now. This is when rosters get put, players cash in on past quality performance or restructured deals.
And when everybody on the internet thinks they know how salary cap works and how much we have to spend. Yeah. So
exactly.
Anything. Spoiler alert. Nobody knows anything about that. But you know what I love is that the Saints fans are like sort of postmodern in their relationship to the salary cap, because they've seen Mickey Loomis just do these magic tricks every offseason to get under the cap. And they're just like, the salary cap isn't like a real thing. It doesn't exist. So it's like, do whatever you want. And I'm like, I can't argue with past precedent at this point. It's like, they're going to re-sign Lattimore, aren't they? They're going to trade for a new quarterback. I'm not going to rule any of it out. So,
yeah, like you said, though, it is when the sausage get made. And I almost wonder if it would be better if it was just like, on this day they just release a roster. Here's who's going to be on the team. At least for all of our hearts. But anyway, yeah. I want to throw a shout out again to the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We had Ben Hart on last week, and they had some very nice things to say about us on their podcast this past week. So thank you guys for mentioning us. But yeah, it was pretty cool. They're one of their hosts, Chris Siegel. He said he'll listen to our podcast if we can use our force powers to say whether or not Drew Brees is going to retire, because he wants to know if Tom Brady's 9th championship is smooth sailing or rocky waters. And
he's retiring, but he's retiring, but that's not guaranteed that it's smooth sailing.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good way of putting it. I think they got that championship by the skin of their teeth. Get winning in the Superdome the way that they did, and
I'm very sorry, Tom Brady, but you ain't in the AFC East anymore. NFC South, even the bad teams in the NFC South are going to, come back and haunt you, at times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Trying to repeat in this division, in these circumstances, is going to be very difficult. I mean, heck, the Chiefs aren't going anywhere. The Chiefs are not going anywhere. They had an epically bad game in that Super Bowl, but they're going to be back.
So yes.
Anyway, but yeah, I want to say thank you to the guys for giving us a little shout out. That was kind of cool. And Ben was a great guest. So well, tonight we are going to be talking about a whole slew of things. We're going to be a combination of Star Wars and Marvel because there's a lot of tantalizing stuff in the news for Star Wars. I think that will get us rolling for a while, especially when it comes to you don't have on here about what Ryan Johnson said about the continuity.
Oh,
so
let me get it. I'll get it for you.
That's the one I was like looking forward to, saying, screaming from the mountaintop that I was right. But anyway, we got there's
So wait. So we got to talk about it because it makes you were right.
Yes, vindication. I want vindication. All the crap that I spout on this show, I want people. Ryan Johnson confirmed I was. Howard Johnson's right about Ryan Johnson being right. Reverend. But we got a lot of Star Wars stuff to talk about. But then we're going to recap the last half of WandaVision because that just finished on Friday. And so let's first dive into some trivia and the Star Wars trivia Trivial Pursuit. What the heck? We got a low flying something over Gentilly here. I don't know. We're being invaded, guys. I don't know what's going on. Sorry. I thought somebody was playing theme music for a second, and it's just, I don't know.
That's the aliens.
Must be.
The UFOs.
I'll let Luna deal with it. All right. So, Dave, who's the first clone commander shown getting the order from Darth Sidious to massacre Jedi?
Commander Cody?
The Magic 8 Ball says you are correct. Yes, Commander Cody. Is he going to be that? There's been talks about him being in the Kenobi series. I mean, you got Tamura Morrison, and it could be, him looking for the Jedi that, he didn't get. I don't know. That might be kind of interesting.
I've been seeing a lot of rumors and speculation about Kenobi.
About what? You froze up there a little bit.
Oh, I was going to say, I've seen a lot of rumors about Kenobi crossovers as well as Cassian crossovers. So, I'm not going to write anything off at this point.
Yeah. Like I said, you got Tamura Morrison already doing stuff, and you can, just have to, you don't really even have to de-age him all that much, but anyway. All right. So Dave wins his round. All right, Fredo. What 4 words of warning for future trench runs does Gold 5 communicate before he crashes into the Death Star? Holy cow.
They came from behind!
Is that 4 words?
They came from behind.
They came from behind. All right, yeah. I've had a long day, guys. I'm sorry. It sounded like a lot more than 4 words there. I was trying to help him out. All right,
well, you got to remember, he's shouting this as he's getting shut down before he goes, dives head first into the Death Star. He can't be constant into the Death Star there.
Yeah, but there's like that moment of static that you even put into your reenactment, which I loved. They came from behind.
All right, well, here's mine. First one I saw. Whose house band includes the musicians Max Rebo, Cy Snoodles, and Droopy McCool? That would be Jabba the Hutt. That it is. And they all died on the sail barge, didn't they?
Well, who's coming for them? That's the question. Who's rescuing them?
Well, I'm just wondering if they died in the sail barge, because it would be really cool if they were now Boba Fett's house band. That's all I'm saying. Musicians need a gig. Maybe they,
Yeah, you don't want to take a gig and all of a sudden somebody shoots up the place. Be like, I'm not with them. This is just how it works.
Yeah, I think they were playing the sail barge. I believe.
I was gonna say, like, how many of them did we actually see? I think I saw Max.
Definitely some Max because he's
Yeah.
playing music, and that's when R2's bartending, serving drinks.
I will leave open the possibility that some of the other members of the band
You
were
know,
not on the sail barge.
so that R2D2 Fredo, if I had, because there is the R2 Builders Club, and I almost got my own. Did I ever tell you guys this? I almost had my own fully functional full size R2D2 because a friend of mine in Omaha he made his own. He had the plans. The plans you can get, just they're online. You can get them whatever. But he had the plans, but I have no woodworking skills or mechanical skills whatsoever. So I was at the high school in the town we lived in, and I went to the shop teacher, sorry, industrial tech, and I said, "Hey, if I paid for the materials, could you get your classes to put this thing together?" He's like, "Oh yeah." He said, "We get Project Lead the way to do the robotics on the mechanical stuff for it." And I was like, "That's awesome." And then I moved to New Orleans. So that's that's how
No,
that went. But if I had that full size R2D2, I would make sure that I had the bar attachment because that would just be so wicked cool.
now I know that for the Droid Depot at Galaxy's Edge, if you buy an R2, you can buy the little attachments that make it kind of like a serving droid, like the bartending droid. But I wouldn't trust a drink on that little plastic tray. So I think yours is a better plan, Aaron. Full size, actually sturdy.
But yeah, I had my own little sweatshop lined up, and then I moved to New Orleans. So
I gotta say, when I was at Galaxy's Edge, it pretty much it was cost prohibitive to do both, right? Do
Mhm.
the droid building and the lightsaber experience. And that lightsaber thing was just kind of a no-brainer for me because I was like, the droids aren't life size. I don't know why that was like a deal breaker for me, but it was. It just seems like such a compromise, I guess. I was like, I don't want to compromise. I want to like a real life full size thing.
you can
So.
buy a
Yep,
full size R2 at Galaxy's Edge for like what, 25 grand? Is that what it is?
I think so.
It's like
Hold
something
on.
stupid like that. So, but I can tell you, you can build one for a lot less. But I mean, you're putting in a lot of sweat equity, unless you can line up your own little sweatshop like I had, and you
Yep.
know.
It is
So,
$25,000 to buy your very own life size R2D2 at Galaxy's Edge.
so retire R2. Retire R2. Anyway, all right. So we'll join our Patreon so you can give us the $25,000 to get our own R2D2 that we can just like rotate ownership from month to month at each other's houses. Yeah. So all right. So Fredo, with that, let's move on to some news. Let's get us rolling on.
Okay, we'll start with the easy stuff and then we'll get to the more enjoyable talking points. This is not news, it's more rumor, although I think it's close to being confirmed. This from last week. Uh, Deadline was said reporting that actress Indira Varma from Game of Thrones and Rome and a bunch of other stuff was set to join Obi-Wan Kenobi series. They haven't given what her role is. They haven't given what the plot details are. They just simply say, "Hey, Ewan McGregor's back as Obi-Wan. Hayden Christensen is back as Darth Vader." They did also kind of mention other the previously reported rumors of some other characters in the cast sheet. So I'll go over them and I'll let you hear them to tell me what you think. First character is called Riley, aka Eve. It's a 20 to 25-year-old female co-lead, female BIPOC, whose character details are being kept under wraps. So Tia, a 30s female supporting, Harold, male, late 20s, 30s,
There's a
supporting.
Star Wars name for you, Harold.
Harold, and that's the comedic, quirky male. And then Bella, 40s, and her female. And for some of them, they're, like for the females, they're looking for Latin, Black, Indigenous people of color actresses. Harold, they kind of leave it wide open because you need somebody quirky. So they don't know if their Obama's taken any of these roles or if it's a different role, but they're moving towards getting these roles.
That's just the worst thing, right? Doesn't that like just play into every stereotype that every like social justice warrior criticism Star Wars ever gets? You know, it's like, okay, so this character must be, you know, a particular race, whereas, well, this one is comic relief, so we can, you know, pretend that, you know, whatever.
No, we're not even giving him a quirky Star Wars name. He's just Harold.
Harold.
Harold,
What is it? He's the
Hank.
janitor at the cantina. You know, Harold the janitor. He's pushing a mop. You know, and
I,
after I've made fun of, you know, it's like at the my when we were talking all the Legends books, the EU books and everything. I was like, you know, I said Star Wars names in literature is just horrible. And so, okay, Aaron,
Six.
we heard you. Now here's Harold. Next one's going to be Paul, and or I think of the Family Guy line said, "What is the least sexy male name?" Keith. we're gonna we're gonna get Keith. Um, with all due respect, anybody named Keith out there. So okay, well, I don't know
I
who.
gotta,
Yeah, especially
I
Keith
gotta say,
David.
I'm wild about Harold.
Maybe he works in the square. You know, Herald Square.
And where
Give my
Tyler and
regards
Mos
to
Eisley.
Kenobi. Remember me at Herald Square. Kenobi's going to be a musical, folks.
I'm into it.
Let's
It's
just make it
something
as wacky.
different.
Look, we already had Star Wars Dance as a video game. Why not have a whole cop rock style Star Wars TV show?
Man.
That's an old reference, by the way.
Okay, so now that we've ruined Kenobi for everybody, I don't know. You know, that's just the thing. Is like, how do you even begin to think who these people are going to be?
Right.
Except,
Right.
you know, Harold is going to be working at the junkyard, or you know, or like I said, as a janitor or something. Um,
Because, well, I mean, I guess the one caveat that I always throw is that Obi-Wan chose Ben as his hiding name. And Ben's one of the most generic, basic, kind of normal names that Star Wars has ever had.
yeah,
So,
so. You know, the other thing that's going to be interesting is how they're going to explain away, you know, in well, of course, maybe it's just Owen and Beru just kind of kept Luke at, you know, a
arm's length.
distance, you know, from him, because Luke described him as a, you know, strange old hermit that really nobody knows anything about, just a strange dude that hangs out, you know, beyond the Dune Sea. You know, it's now he's gonna have friends, and you know, and
Or people he
Harold,
knows.
you know, so I
Well,
don't know.
you got to figure every now and again he has to make a run into town to get supplies at the very
Go
least.
go
So,
womping and a whooping.
right, right. We'll move away from Harold though. So to other not rumors, but kind of somebody interviewed over at Topps WinterCon. Apparently, they interviewed Katie Sackhoff about Bo-Katan's character. So they asked her what animated character she'd like to see come into live action. She said Pre Vizsla, which would kind of
He,
be kind of
I was
difficult.
gonna say well, I mean, they
Yeah.
brought Maul back, but you know, yeah, he
Well, he's
home.
got no head.
Well,
He ain't got no head, Lieutenant Dan. But okay, so her quote is, I love Maul. I think he's constantly coming back to life anyway. He's a really hard guy to kill, so you never know. Now, look, we pretty much know that he died at the end of when last time we saw him in Rebels. But she says, I think I would love to see some stuff with Pre Vizsla. That was such a fun storyline for Bo, and it was such a fun glimpse into who she was, because she didn't necessarily start out on the right side of things. She didn't start out as she thought she was doing the right thing, but that was opposite to what Vizsla was doing.
yeah, but did she not pay attention to the rest of the series where, like I said, Homeboy dies? It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
I,
the funny thing is that they also asked her about her relationship, the Bo-Katan's character's relationship with Satine. She's like, "Oh, I'd love to bring her into live action too." And I'm like, she's bringing all these dead characters back to life. Although I would say maybe as a flashback back to during the period in the Clone Wars, you know, some of the stuff that we don't see happen back when Obi-Wan and Anakin are away from Mandalore. It could act as a good example of if you try to introduce all the dynamics that kind of separate or that split the various factions within Mandalore
Yeah,
ahead of explaining to Din Djarin, okay, you're now wield the dark saber and you deal with all this drama. Let us explain to you all this drama
you
and
know what?
rather
Pardon me.
flashback.
Sorry, I coughed. You know what? What's interesting? I've heard people speculate that the armorer is actually one of the I can't remember. Gosh, what was her name in the comic? But anyway, she was right along Gar Saxon, um,
Oh,
and actually in the Clone Wars, Vanessa Marshall voiced her. But anyway, they're saying that the speculation is that that character, and forgive me, I can't remember the name right offhand, but is the armorer. So the armorer might, come back into all this, which I mean, then brings whole Death Watch, everything into it. So anyway,
yeah, it's. I mean, it's just that there's all this back history or background information that the audience that caught up with Clone Wars and Rebels knows that the character of the Mandalorian Din Djarin doesn't know. So at some point, all that's got to be because all of that's going to color the dynamics into season 3 with him and the dark saber and Bo-Katan. So maybe there's a way to bring Pre-Vizsla and Satine into live action, just kind of juxtaposing and displaying their internal
ah,
dynamics and how much.
another bad Star Wars name, Corky. Corky was
From
that was Satine's brother, right? Corky, yeah, it's Satine and Bo-Katan's brother is Corky, and Corky
There you
died
go.
too. Yeah. So that was
There you go. We're getting all the bad names out of our system
Yeah,
tonight.
nephew. It's Satine's nephew.
okay.
It's somebody.
Stinky.
Yeah,
Stinky
Corky.
is an all-time bad name
and
for a Star Wars character.
and here comes Alfalfa and and Spanky. Yeah. So, uh, but however, the whole Pre-Vizsla thing. I mean, it almost makes you wonder: is it Katie Sackhoff? Just
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
just throwing
Speculating.
no, just throwing a wink and a nod to John Favreau. I mean, it's like, hey, thank
Mm.
you for giving me a gig, and of course, Favreau would want to voice the part. He just would. It's like in what was the line from um, Family Guy, Empire Strikes Back, when Yoda says, John Favreau is a good guy, puts himself in his own movies, but so
Not the big role.
but anyway, so I mean,
Hey, I like the idea of where it's going. Like that we've talked about this season 3. It's gonna be Mandalore.
Mhm.
Okay, so relate it to Din. I mean, like he has the potential to interact with all of these characters who are still around within his new role, whatever that might be. But really, like that needs to cut into who he really is and what
Mhm.
his past is and where he's coming from. And if you tell that in a really interesting, intelligent way, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be interesting to see how they because they must be writing it right now. I can't imagine that they're not ahead of filming. But it's interesting because it's a lot of stuff that, like I said, we as the fans are looking forward to. That they got to figure out the way to kind of present it all, as well as presenting it to people who didn't watch a minute of Clone Wars or Rebels.
you know,
Because there's a lot of people who are not going to know any of these names until they get said in The Mandalorian.
it'll be interesting though, because I just got thinking, it's like the Mandalore story has been told, in bits and pieces all over the place. It's
Right.
in comics, it's in books, it's in you know TV series, whatnot. Like I said, but just little smatterings here and there. And it kind of gets into our discussion about WandaVision later, is because a lot of stuff from the comics kind of lined up with WandaVision, but then kind of not. They took their liberties, and I'm not into that fandom, so I don't know how many people were up in arms about changing things. This wasn't the way it was in the comics or anything like that. We don't have to talk about that right now. But with the Mandalorian stuff, I'm guessing we probably won't get much deviation from what we've seen in the past because Filoni has got his thumb on it.
Well,
Right.
That's
and And the catch I would say is that with Marvel and the WandaVision and the comics world, they're accustomed to multiple timelines, different universes, all that. The catch until Legends got excited, and even now, it's always been it's one storyline. If you play Knights of the Old Republic or you read the Tales of the Jedi comic books from Dark Horse back in the 90s, it was all supposed to connect to the movies and the Thrawn trilogy and these books that followed. And then, Disney bought it and all the stuff got shoved into Legends. But the concept still exists that Clone Wars and Rebels and Mandalorian and then Ahsoka and all these shows that will follow after, they're all existing in the same plane. They can't be, oh, you exist on this end of the universe and it's completely different and apart from this, so to speak. Not in a different universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm all for it. I, 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 I have high expectations for this show at this point. I think The Mandalorian is a good show, and I've enjoyed watching it to this point. And so it's like, okay, well, make it character based, please. Like fold in any character you want to, but let's make it about Din. And we know that he experienced the end of the Clone Wars from that one flashback that we saw. And so through his lens, you could tell that entire story in one coherent way if you wanted to, and get at what makes him who he is. And I would just love it.
Okay, so I'll move us away from that to something a bit more serious as we transition forward. Kelly Marie Tran did an interview with the Hollywood Reporter because she's actually the star and the lead in Disney's new movie, Raya and the Last Dragon.
She is a Disney princess now. Yeah.
She is now. She is now officially, well, if she wasn't before, she's definitely now a Disney princess. But of course, the subject in the interview, because they start talking to her about her process of how she voiced this character. Because of course, I mean, she's doing this years ago and takes a few years to animate. But then the discussion naturally turns back around to Star Wars and kind of what happened, the backlash that she faced, and her eventual decision to step away from social media and all that stuff. So uh, she made mentions that at first she didn't thought. I mean, she thought it was. She didn't realize it was going to be such a big topic. She says, "What's interesting to me about working in this industry is that certain things become so public, even if you don't really need them to be. Like it was, I did it for my own sanity. It was basically me being like, oh, this isn't good for my mental health. I'm obviously going to leave this." So that's her saying, "I'm leaving Instagram. I'm leaving Twitter. I'm deleting all that." Uh, and then she was, I mean, the horrible thing about it, she was in the middle of producing in the middle of another movie, and she had to go deal with all these emotions, all that was happening to her. Uh, of course, now she's discussing the experience. Now she kind of goes like she fell in love very publicly, and then had a very public and embarrassing, horrible breakup. She relied a lot on her close knit circle of friends, and she says, "I left. I said no to a lot of things. It felt like I was just hearing the voice of my agents, my publicity team, people who were telling me what to say and what to do and how to feel. And anytime that happens, I have to close up shop, I have to go away, really interact in the real world, read books, journal, go on hikes, and remind myself that there was a fire that burned inside of me before Star Wars, before any of this, and I needed to find that again." So, I mean, in some ways, and the article, I mean, the interview is kind of on her side about a lot of things. Because, I mean, look, she was and will be forever the first woman of color lead in a Star Wars movie. She's also one of the first Asian Disney princesses. So she understands that there's a lot of these labels that are going to get attached to her. Even if she sometimes goes, I'm doing my role. This is what I got to do. But then she's also accepting of kind of her place right now. So she admits that she had to grow. um, but then I'll kind of give a positive story about it because Ryan Johnson, discussing at the time, she says she would introduce herself to everyone in the crew. She'd go around in the various departments asking what people were doing there. Ryan Johnson says I'd turn around, she'd be helping sew feathers for the porgs. So that's kind of who she is. And it's in some ways it's I'm glad that she's kind of found the other end of all this, but just going back and thinking, man, people put her through hell.
And that's the thing that sucks is that, of course, I taught high school band for 15 years, and obviously I loved band. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taught it. And I wanted, I thought it was the best thing I did in high school and in college, and then I wanted to pass that joy on to these students that were coming up through my band, and some just it ended up being a miserable experience for them one way or another. And I always just felt like, this thing that I love so much, was a miserable experience for this person. And that's the way I feel about this. Is like, Star Wars should not be a miserable experience for somebody. You know what I mean? And it wasn't really Star Wars per se, but it was. I mean, the fandom is part of it. I mean, and again, it's just like, and I can understand getting off of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram if you wake up every day and somebody's hurling a racial slur at you, or saying you're ruining this
Their thing.
iconic thing. It's not even their thing. This iconic thing in our culture. Star Wars is huge, um, and that would I mean that man, I, but hats off to her
Yeah.
for having the strength to say no. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame her one bit. At the time, it made perfect sense why she did it. Her explanation makes perfect sense as to why she did that. It's like I wouldn't deal with that either. I don't think I would want to deal with it either. And so,
and
you buried the lead too. I'll say one more thing. You buried the lead because she like was on the cover of the magazine
Yeah,
too,
she's got this
and
whole spread.
she looked fierce. She looked
yeah.
fierce, like queen, And I'm like, you go, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it was stunning cover. Then getting so not to trash the Rise of Skywalker, but I mean that was one of those decisions where it's like, okay, with all due respect to Naomi Ackie, I love Jana, but there's no reason in the world why Rose could not have done filled that role and been on the you know on the adventure with everybody else. It was so that'll probably lead into our other discussion here in a little bit. But
Yeah,
like I said, it was just that's the one thing that really rubbed me wrong about the Rise of Skywalker is that they just Rose was just pushed to the side.
yeah, no, and actually, well, I'll mention one more story before we get to that big one, but it's all ties in together. And I agree with you. I mean, there were ways in which it could have done it. But speaking of Rise of Skywalker, I'll only mention that because we discussed it earlier in the week. In case you didn't know, Juna Suotamo is coming out with a book. Right now, it's actually just out in Finnish. It's called Roar Elamani Wookieana, aka My Life as a Wookiee. So it's
Well,
kind of
I
talking
know
some of
one
his,
word in Finnish now. All right,
yeah, Elamani Wookieana.
Wukiana.
And it says, but so it actually gets into some of his stories. And there was a thread on Twitter from somebody discussing about the book. Star Wars fans out there, apparently like the original fight in Solo was supposed to be much more brutal. It's like Jonas says it was supposed to be more like Mortal Kombat, which picturing Han versus Chewie in Mortal Kombat does not do well, with me. Like I can't imagine it. Uh, but the big kind of story that kind of laid up that was regarding Rise of Skywalker and how there was actually a scene in the script for when Chewie gets captured for Kylo Ren to torture Chewbacca, and it was filmed. And Juna says that in the book that it was very tough for him because Adam Driver was quote truly sociopathic in the role, and he wonders if the scene came out a bit too extreme for Star Wars, or if it didn't fit to show Kylo being so dark ahead of his pivot back towards the light, later on in the movie. I mean, how are you gonna reconcile torturing one of the two or three 100% everybody's behind characters, and then 60 minutes later, oh no, we're sorry. He's made his peace with the ghost of his dad, and now he's a good guy.
I still have a problem with that, even though they didn't show the torture of the Wookiee scene. But the one when you shared that with us, I mean, the first thing that went through my head was, you know, fair play, going there and actually exploring that possibility. It would not have fit in a Star Wars movie, but they were, yeah, and you're right. If it's like you can't then 20 minutes later make Ben one with the Force, you know what I mean? So you're
Yeah.
yeah. But like I said, hats off for at least exploring that and going there. But that would have I couldn't have handled that in the theater.
Hmm.
I don't know what they were thinking. I still don't know what they were thinking, and it always comes back to this. But it's just, how can you say that your story is in an intentional way is meant to be about Ben Solo's
Redemption.
return and redemption,
And have him kill the family
and then
dog.
have a scene like that in there? Makes no sense whatsoever.
I mean, killing Han is one thing; it's horrible, and that was we said it way back when. That was their efforts to make sure you knew he was the bad guy, but they brought him back towards the light. But that was two movies before. You can't have him in the same movie. Like literally, torturing Chewbacca is like kicking your pet. It's like beating up your best friend. It's like people would have revolted on the theater screen, in the theaters if that had happened. Like I don't know how you bring him back from that. So which
Well,
so hmm?
you know my take on this whole sequence was just like they should have killed him. Well, they're like, we're gonna kill him, and then no, we're walking it back. It's like, well, it would have been narratively interesting if you had made that stick. And it's the same deal with a torture sequence, which I don't think anybody wanted to see, but it would have been something different. But at that point, you box yourself into a corner. You're not going to redeem Ben Solo after you do something like that. It's just like, it just feels like they were throwing ideas against the wall, and like, oh, we're going
so
to film this and then maybe we'll use it or
so
maybe we
so
won't.
so let me bring in the story that Aaron's chomping at the bit to get to, because this is from LRM Online. But basically, Sarah Wilson, the author, has continued her interview, releasing snippets from an interview with Ryan Johnson. So she asked Ryan Johnson point blank, "Did you know that Ben was going to die when you were making The Last Jedi? Did you know that from the beginning?" He goes, "No, I did not." And she goes, "Me irritated because I realized that killing Ben Solo was not always the plan." Ryan notices my expression of sad disgust and laughingly asks me what that was for. She says now, she admits, I had a lot of feelings about that ending. She was wearing a Ben Solo deserved better t shirt, which made him laugh more. He explained that it was very much a full handoff between 7 and 8, just as it was from 8 to 9. He says Ryan did his best to tee up a bunch of things and try to bring 8 to a point where there were a lot of places the story could go. He said he didn't want to be unfair to the next director and leave a lot of possibilities. He wasn't trying to be for a specific outcome for the series. Quote, but to have lots of dramatic potential for episode 9, end quote. He answered his question again by saying he didn't know whether Kylo would live or die, then quickly corrected himself to say he didn't know whether Ben would live or die, and how the series would resolve. So, in other words, there was never an overarching plan for this trilogy. It was just, well, this is what I got from the last guy before me. I'm gonna do my thing. I'm gonna hand it off to the next guy. That's it.
See, and that's what's so frustrating about it. That's just what is so frustrating. I appreciate artistic license, but it's like, you know, even record companies say make whatever Christmas album you want, but we want a Christmas album. You know what I mean? It's or make whatever album you want, but we want this type of stuff. That I mean, so I don't think that is, especially when you're dealing with. I mean, the franchise is not J.J. Abrams or Ryan Johnson's. It's it uh, and so just to say, write whatever you want without any sort of guidance is just it's a failure on Lucasfilm. Um, so yeah, I mean, and like I said, duh, it was obvious. Now the other part of that, didn't in that same interview, didn't he confirm that Raylo actually was a thing?
Yeah,
And and
he
that's
admitted
another
that
thing
Raylo
that
was.
is still, and we're going to talk about it on a later episode, but I still that I do not like that. I don't care if that's what Ryan Johnson said he was going for. Then he needs to look at what he wrote, because that's an abusive relationship from the get go, and then for it to turn into this, oh, he's just, he was, even though he was torturing Chewie 30 minutes ago, he's, so misunderstood, and yay, now I'm going to kiss him. It's like, when we're trying to, sorry, I'll save that for the other episode. But I mean, that
Look,
it's just an awful relationship, and for it to be having, it was supposed to be a thing. No, but anyway, so yes, it was obvious that that Lucasfilm gave no guidance.
But and I think it kind of goes more to what Dave was saying regarding the Chewie torture scene. It's like, let's throw something and see, does it work? Do we like it? How does it make us feel? Okay, no, we know it's not going to work right now. Maybe in some earlier draft of the script, it worked, but then that script probably had a different ending, which kind of tells you that if they get to the point where you're building a set, putting the actors in there and making full makeup, you felt comfortable enough with that scene being in the movie that you thought, okay, at the very least, we're gonna have it ready to go, and if we decide to excise it later, we'll excise it later. But we want at least to have that option. And usually, time is money in movies, so you're not doing all that for something you're just gonna throw away cavalierly. You're supposed to have some sort of idea of where this is all gonna go, and I don't know that they necessarily did. I think they were just, by the time they got to episode 9, they're very much, these are the points we want to end. Get there however you can.
I
Dave.
think people can have whatever viewpoints on these movies that they want to have, right? And they come into this and they think there are people that think Rise of Skywalker is a better movie and an improvement on Last Jedi because Last Jedi just left them cold. There are people within the fandom who believe in Reylo and think that as presented, could lead one to believe like, oh, this could be a decent relationship. But reasonable minds can differ on all of this. But like when you look at it from a perspective of the Skywalker saga, right? That's how it's marketed. It was the saga, episodes 1 through 6 originally, and they added 7, 8, 9, and it's like it's supposed to be one coherent story. I mean, that's how it's marketed. That's what they sold us. And 7, 8, 9 had no plan. It had no plan.
Yeah.
And it makes me go back to the whole idea that Lucas had some plot details that he wanted to share with Disney, and Disney went, nope, we want a clean break from what you've done. We want to do our own thing. We're going to hire our own creators. We're going to do our own group, put it together. We're going to make this happen on our own, but we are still going to continue the story because, again, we go back, decisions made. You didn't need to continue with episode 7 as a continuation of the story. You could very well have said, look, Skywalker Saga 1 through 6, we're done, but we're going to do something like the Hot Republic or something or we're going to go
They wouldn't have.
the
They wouldn't have got people coming to the show like that. It had to be that again. The candy to get you in the van.
You want that Han scene. Chewie, we're home.
Well, yeah. You don't. You don't say, "Hey, we're bringing back Star Wars," and it's going to be totally. They wouldn't have got. They got the audience for Force Awakens because it was so fan servicey. But that being said, they could have started with 7 that way, and they could have then gone nuts in 8 and 9 if they would have had a coherent line through them. There's a way you can do that. We've talked about it before. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but Han, Leia, and Luke could have all been just killed off after 7 because we were invested in Rey, Poe, and Finn at that point. Maybe keep Luke around for 8, fine, whatever, but nobody else had to be there. You know what I mean? And because they were just to get us invested in these new characters. But yeah, there was no plan. I mean, it's like when I was in a band, when we first started, I would just, I never wrote up any set lists. We'd get to the gig and I'd just call out whatever tune kind of I felt. And guess what? Those shows sucked. It was not enjoyable for people to listen to. It was, there was a lot of fumbling on stage. There was like, okay, I got to get this instrument, I got to get that. And then when I started writing out set lists, it was like, gee whiz, folks, it's like our shows are better. I wonder why. It's like writing a paper. If you write an outline, guess what, kids? Your paper is going to be, regarded more by your teacher. It's going to get a better grade. It's going to make more sense if you write an outline rather than you just start writing stream of consciousness from your computer. Um, so yeah,
Both of what you guys just said is true. Like what Fredo said is like, if you want to tell like an interesting story and not have a plan at all, you can just do a standalone film. And what Aaron, you said is true. It's like you're not going to do that because you want to maximize the amount of money that you can make. So you have to go 7, 8, 9. So it's like, okay, so once you make that call, once you decide, well, this is the way we really kind of have to go, you need a plan. You need a plan. And then like, this is why I harp on this. And this is why I feel like almost offended that they didn't have any kind of a plan down on paper. Because it's like,
but devil's
you
advocate,
guys decided that this was the way to go, and then you didn't make it happen.
And so talking out both sides of my mouth and devil's advocate here, it's like, okay, to say that George Lucas had a plan is not being very genuine. You know what I mean? It's like he says he had a plan, but I mean, come on. There's no way that he knew that Luke and Leia were brother and sister. He had an idea. He had kind of sketched out some ideas of, where Anakin, came from and stuff like that. But 1, 2, and 3 were never totally fleshed out until he got to writing them in the late 90s, So, but I will say this, at least it was one person who was kind of playing around with this idea of a story. So it made it a little bit more, it was more cohesive. Here it was just, so yeah, Lucasfilm, and again, you guys spoiled me now on Marvel because there are people working their butts off to make sure that there is continuity between, these movies, and they do it with a gazillion movies. We're only talking about 3 with the same characters. It's like it's not, it shouldn't have been that hard of a deal. But
you to your point, 4, 5, and 6, you're right. Like that wasn't the original plan. He deviated considerably. We've talked about how he's changed things over and over. After the movies have released, he's changed things. But I just like, maybe that makes him a creative genius. The fact that he didn't have a plan and 4, 5, and 6 came together as beautifully as they did. I mean, like maybe that's we should be singing his praises more. But like, I mean, come on, 8 and 9 are just they don't connect. I mean, it doesn't.
It's wholly different characters. It's what's interesting.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the characters of episode, even from 7 to 8, and then from 8 to 9, they don't feel like they're the same people. Now, you can say in some instances they've grown, they've adapted, whatever. They've become more who they were supposed to be. But again, it's not like where you saw Luke from episode 4 to episode 5, and then the Luke in episode 6 looks nothing like the guy you first met, but you know why that is. You've connected the tissue, the lines going from 4 to the character that you meet in episode 6 at Jabba's palace is that guy. Is just, okay, he's grown up. So it's difficult. I mean, it's, in some instances you want to sing the praises of George Lucas because he got so much right, and then go, yeah, but there was some other stuff he didn't get right. But luck sometimes comes into the equation. I wonder how much different all of this is if Colin Trevorrow doesn't get asked to leave episode 9. If he gets to make his episode 9, will that been better? Would that have been worse? Would have connected better? If J.J. Abrams doesn't have to come in last minute and basically, okay, we can't do none of this, we're just, winging it because that's all the time we have, because we are literally locked onto the Christmas 2019 release date. We have to come out on that date. That's the only hard rule that we have. I don't know.
That was the biggest mistake, right? I mean, like we've talked about that. Like they just rushed. They were
Mhm.
rushed. They didn't have
Well,
time to build the script the way that they needed to
and again,
Yeah.
figure out. Go ahead.
well, I'm sorry, so the writers for these movies, it's very similar to, musicians of the, the classical and the Baroque era, where you had a patron, some high muckety muck, well, wanted music for his party on boats on the Thames, and so he got Handel to write water music. That's literally what it was for. Handel wrote music for this boat party and called it water music, and it's one of the most famous pieces of music that you'll listen to. Same thing, music for the royal fireworks, the music that was played at my wedding. That was Handel that wrote that for, guess what, folks, a fireworks celebration that the king was having. And so they had parameters. It's like, I want you to write music for this gig, that this shindig I'm throwing. So, he didn't tell him what to write note for note, but music for the royal fireworks can't be something that's going to put people to sleep. Otherwise your patron's not going to pay you. So Lucasfilm needs to maybe start behaving a bit more like, a patron. It's like, okay, we want you to write a movie, but here's, within these broad parameters, we need to get, like we've talked about a gazillion times, A to B. But it just seemed, it seemed way too hippie-ish. Like, whatever, man, just write your movie.
You can do both. I mean, you really can. Like when we're talking about connective tissue, connecting to these other stories and making a narrative that goes from point A to point B. It's like, yeah, you can do that. You can do standalones too. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can have Ryan Johnson do creative, weird, experimental stuff over here in the corner, and then you can have the Skywalker saga over here. It doesn't have to be one or the other, and that's, I guess, like that's where I'm frustrated, because it's like 7, 8, 9. I mean,
Well,
we've been over
so
and over and over.
yeah, but
Oh,
here's the other thing is that it doesn't even really take Lucasfilm. As I think about this, it doesn't even have to be Lucasfilm to dictate certain things. This is why I still want J.J. Abrams and Ryan Johnson on the same stage, whatever, 15 years from now, and telling the story, because I want to know, when Ryan Johnson got hired, did he then have a meeting with J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan and say, all right, so where, if you were writing 8, what do you think, where would you go? Not that Ryan had to take that advice, but where would you go if you were writing 8? Well, here's some ideas we had, blah blah blah. Or when Ryan gets done, he's, and JJ's going to, do 9, to say, all right, where did you see these things going? And like I said, you don't have to take those ideas verbatim, but at least you see where that trajectory is, and you go, okay, that gives me kind of a direction of where to go, because I got my own ideas over here. I can connect those two, and I don't know. That just seems to be kind of the responsible thing, but whatever.
mhm.
I
No, and then
understand. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, and what's incredible is, maybe the more incredible aspect is the difficulty that they had in making this happen, juxtaposed against how effortlessly Marvel under Kevin Feige makes it work. You know, one is 3 movies. That's all we're making. Okay, there was a Resistance animated TV show, but by and large, it's 3 movies that we're making. They're coming every 2 years. Kevin Feige is running a machine that's just cranking out product every 6 months. Here comes your new movie. You get your new movie around February, and your new movie around May, and your new movie around 4th of July. And now you're going to get TV shows, one in the spring, and one in the fall, and one every now and again. And the quality doesn't drop, even though it's 100 different things and 100 different chefs cooking at 100 different restaurants. Whereas Lucasfilm had, okay, we're going to hire J.J. Abrams, Ryan Johnson, and initially Colin Trevorrow before they went back to J.J. Abrams. And they're like, look, make us 3 movies. That's all you're asking them. And it proved such a difficult thing for them to do.
I saw somebody like tweet out something similar to that effect, which was basically, I simultaneously find that Star Wars touches on human issues and philosophical issues in a much more nuanced and interesting way
Mhm.
than Marvel movies
Right.
by a very wide margin. And I simultaneously am sitting here saying, why can't you connect your movies in the same way that Marvel does? I
Yeah.
don't know. But maybe that's a decent transition for us into our main topic.
Yeah, and I'm out of beer, so I can't. It's just I can't rail on the sequel trilogy anymore. I still enjoy the movies though. But
Mhm.
but it's just one of those things where it is just kind of like you know don't don't try and don't lie to me and tell me that Palpatine was the thing all along. Don't lie to me. It's like it doesn't it we saw it for what it was. You know what I mean? That's the thing that's frustrating. It's like they tried to sell us on, this is the plan all along. No, it wasn't. It's like I meant to do that.
No, you
we've
did.
all
No,
we've
you
all said
didn't.
that. But anyway, all right. So yes, Marvel, WandaVision. The series, not just the season, but the series finale. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit. I got a question, but
Mhm.
um,
Me too.
so the series finale was this Friday. But when we last talked about WandaVision, we covered about the first half of the season. So I'm going to give just a brief little synopsis of the last 4 episodes. Um, Episode 6 was the all new Halloween Spooktacular, and it's just Halloween in Westview, and um, yeah, we'll just kind of go from there. Then episode 7 was breaking the fourth wall. This was where we end up finding out who Agnes is. It was Agatha all along, right? That was in this episode. So we
That's
found
right.
out she was the witch. And then at the end of that episode, by the way, on breaking the fourth wall, we get the post credit scene of um,
Monica.
Monica, yeah, breaking into Agnes's house and then getting caught by Pietro. And then it got frustrating for me because in episode 8, it was called Previously On, and this was basically Agatha or slash Agnes being the therapist for Wanda, and going through all of her past traumas. But we see nothing of Monica that whole episode.
That episode was great if you think back to all the clip shows that, particularly TV shows that have run for a long time, like The Simpsons or any show that's run for more than 100 episodes. At some point in their history, they start doing a clip show episode where they just,
Yeah,
take footage from other episodes to put it back in. That's basically what the idea is. And so it's very a neat way of kind of doing that,
yeah,
but also exploring
so
Wanda's psyche and history.
so I'll just go through the last two, then I'll take issue with some things here, um, because that was previously on. So yeah, we go through and we actually find out that Wanda has always been a witch. She didn't get all of her powers from the Mind Stone. She was a witch from the get go. So that was kind of interesting. 'Cause
Which,
we're led to believe that it was through von Strucker's experiments that she got all of her powers, but not the case. And then the last one, the series finale. This is just a big fight between Agatha and Wanda, and we see White Vision, take on not real Vision. I don't know. It gets pretty deep in their interactions, but and so we find out that what Wanda created this whole thing um, as basically dealing with the grief of losing Vision. Um, so first of all, I want to say that is this whole I talk about. I don't know what my expectations were for this series, but now seeing it as basically a dramatized, lesson on dealing with grief, you know, is it you forget that it's a comic book thing here, but um, it's just very well done from that perspective. I used to say, me getting up and running in the morning, I'd go through all 7 stages of grief. It's like there's, anger, and there's bartering, there's bargaining, there's denial, and all these things. You see all that in WandaVision. That was very interesting. But I will say my biggest problem though was that I knew it. This last episode, they tried to cram in too much crap and tried to wrap up everything in too short of an episode, where they could have done it in the previous 2 episodes. They could have start getting into that. So that's my one big criticism, because like I said, we see the post-credit scene with Monica Rambeau going into Agatha's house, and then you don't see anything from her from the next, in the next episode. Then in the final episode, she's trapped in this room. Why is she trapped in that room? Why can't she get out? Well, yeah, you can. I'm 48 years old. I can figure out it's because it's a witch, but still, it's like we got to hurry up and tie up all these loose ends. And like I said, the white vision thing could have come earlier, just to give us a little bit more time to play with. And I wonder if, because you've got 9 episodes at what, an average of, let's just say an average of 30, let's just say 30 minutes. Okay. Even though that's cutting it short, 9 episodes. So you're talking 3 movies, right? But really you're telling one story. And I wonder if that gets people just taking their time at the beginning. It's like, I've got a long race, and so I'm just going to start off kind of slow. And then all of a sudden in the last mile, you realize people are passing you up and you're like, oh crap, I got to run faster. That's what it kind of felt like. So yeah, I just wish they would have taken their time a little bit more with the resolution to all this. So anyway, I'm done yammering here. But that was my loved the series, but it was just, I feared that it was going to be too much of a, we got to hurry up and tie all the knots. So what'd you guys think? How do you think this ended up?
I loved it. Again, I don't think there were a lot of these issues that Wanda experienced in the comics are very comic booky. Does this translate well? You look at her outfit. They had a nice play off of that in the Halloween episode, and then again they revisited it in the final episode. Something as basic as that, as costume design, they're like, well, here, we're going to make this ridiculous looking outfit into something that you can wrap your arms around as a member of the audience and say, okay, I'm rolling with this. This is cool. And they did that with so many aspects of her story. Alternate reality, your children who don't exist, conjuring, your lover out of thin air, witchcraft, how you fold witchcraft into a quote unquote realistic universe. It's just, I didn't think that they would take it as far as they did in any of those sorts of respects. And like that they did excites me, because it's like, okay, this is a challenge basically for a filmmaker, a group of filmmakers, to take this on and say, we're going to do this and you're going to buy it.
And amid all the fantastical stuff that you talked about, like I said, they told a very relatable human story.
Yeah, about grief, like you said, and that makes her entirely relatable. And I'm sure we're going to talk about the end and how like how like she just walks away from this. But like, you relate to her. She never becomes the villain. And even Agatha, to a certain degree, you're like, well, she's not even like the true villain here.
Yeah, she's the antagonist, but she's not the villain. Absolutely, yeah.
Right. You can understand where she's coming from. So typical MCU in basically all of those ways. It's like, you're going to fold me in and believe in the unbelievable. And I'm going to just go with it because these characters are very human and relatable. And yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna deviate much from what you guys kind of said in regards to overall impressions. I think at first I was surprised when they announced the show, just because honestly, both Wanda and the Vision have been not even secondary, tertiary characters. They've gotten a moment here in somebody else's movie and a moment there in an Avengers movie. I think their biggest contribution remained up until now was Age of Ultron, which, if you look back, is the least liked of all the Avengers movies. So kind of, they've never had a moment to the spotlight. They've always been secondary to somebody's story, or oh, we need you to come along. We need you to come along. So we're drafting you, and they may get a few lines, but they're never actively involved in some of the resolution of the stuff. Because, granted, a lot of the movies are were more focused in the original Avengers and whatnot. So to give them their own show, give them their own space, to kind of get into their heads, get into the characters, to use it as the first step out, which I know wasn't. See, and this kind of goes to the brilliance of Marvel. WandaVision was not the original first after Phase 4 ended. It was supposed to be Black Widow,
Yeah.
and that got kicked back because of the pandemic. But I think this, in some ways, lands even better as the first step for the MCU going forward, just because it allows for that moment of looking inwards, of looking within at the impact that a lot of, because a lot of the movies that we see now, Marvel has done a good thing in some of the movies in exploring the aftermath, the after effects of all this heroing and fighting and all the sacrificing that they've done. Like Iron Man 3 deals with PTSD that Tony Stark has, and Civil War deals with the loneliness and abandonment issues that Steve Rogers has, feeling like he's sacrificed so much he's literally got nothing else but the former brainwashed best friend of his. Um, but this, so the idea of exploring Wanda's character, exploring the vision, of getting into, okay, these are characters who have lost a ton of stuff. They're lost. I mean, Wanda's lost family, and I love the fact that in that look flashback episode they show you that moment that they reference in Age of Ultron, where the bomb that says Stark Industries lands in the living room and leaves them trapped there for days. Uh, the idea she lost her brother and she gets to see him again. The idea of she lost her lover and here she is again. So it's totally the same. I was telling you guys, it's the first show that I've seen on a comic book grand scale that deals with complicated grief, with the idea of the grieving process and being caught in a loop of just grief where you can't process and move forward. And that's surprising because most genre stuff doesn't come near this stuff because it's very difficult to portray. And they did it in a way that was enjoyable. They did it in a way that people connected with it. They did it in a way that people were able to meme, but they still were able to get the message. And I think that, kudos to their creators for it.
Well, and whoever wrote the line, "What is grief if not love persevering?"
Mm-hmm.
like deserves an award of some sort. Um, but and to Fredo, to your point, the cool, it's kind of like you're telling a joke and you're getting people laughing, and then all of a sudden you start talking about a painful experience. That's there are ways. You see motivational speakers do this all the time, right? Or keynote speakers, they're talking about really positive things, and then all of a sudden we're in serious land. Then they take you back into some lightheartedness, and then we're back into serious land. I saw it in, like I said, keynote addresses at teaching conventions that I went to all the time. Um, they tell, like I said, they tell jokes and then get to their point, and that's kind of what they did. You can't just like, here's a story about death and grief, and nobody's gonna watch WandaVision. So, yeah, you're right. They did it in a great way. So, question for you guys: let's just talk about some things that are kind of hanging out there. The Darkhold, which is the book that Agatha's working with and everything, is that the book that is missing from Doctor Strange's the library in Doctor Strange? The Forbidden section. There's one book that is checked out or missing out of there, and it's Do you think it's the Darkhold? Because she even
Could be.
references the Sorcerer Supreme, and I felt like it's kind of like Tim Rupert, had the or Rupert had the. He said he laughed about me saying the Eddie Haskell thing, last week on last week's episode, and he had the meme of Captain America saying, "I got that reference." It's like I I got that reference. So anyway, but do you think that that's the Darkhold was from that?
It wouldn't surprise me. It was, and it's a good way to connect Wanda even further with Doctor Strange in the next movie. Because you could always say, well, wait a minute, he's been gone for 5 years, and now he comes back, and kind of similar to how Age of Ultron was like, wait, we kind of lost some of this stuff when Shield went away. Well, Doctor Strange's been gone for 5 years now. Some of his stuff has gone missing, and it's powerful and dangerous, and really shouldn't be up there. So let's go get it. So it's a good way to bring him back into her fold because there's going to be a way to bring them together. That's an
Now,
easy one.
to that point, so we'll throw this over to Dave. The post credit scene, the last post credit scene, where we see Wanda sitting on the porch of a cabin and then walking into the cabin, and then the camera goes right past her as she's getting tea, and it goes back into a room, and you see Wanda as the Scarlet Witch doing an astral projection, a la Doctor Strange. But watching, I can't remember if it was Screen Crush or New Rock Stars. I can't remember what on YouTube, but they pointed out that this is different than when Doctor Strange did it, because when Doctor Strange was doing the astral projection, it was so that he could sleep. So his corporal body was never doing anything. Here, Wanda's drinking tea and hanging out and watching nature and going about her day while the astral projection is um,
Studying
is
and
studying.
growing in
So
power.
is Wanda? Um, I guess Agnes says it that you're even more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Possibly, and you wonder too if she's showing the proper respect to, this sort of teaching and understanding it. Because again, like Strange was kind of flippant and cocky and arrogant in his whole deal. But again, like you said, he was trying to cram as much study in as he could, and that was the way for him to do it. She's not, like you said, she's like drinking tea. She's hanging out. She's like, oh, I got a way to do two things at once. I don't really have to study. It makes you wonder if she's like cutting corners or something like that. Um, but I will say this, and if I don't know if you guys saw this, and again, my wife Kate pointed this out to me. You hear the voices of her
The kid.
yeah,
kids
yeah,
in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And that indicates that she's tapping into like alternate realities or different dimensions, and that's a huge tease for the new Doctor Strange movie.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And when you hear at the end and you hear the mom help us from the two little boys, you're like, okay, so she might be looking to find a way to, make have her cake and eat it too, so to speak, punch a hole in reality and save her two non-existent kids who are trapped someplace in some other dimension of reality. And what's the cost of that? What's she gonna do to get that piece of herself back, so to speak? And it's it portends both greatness but also danger because you start punching holes in the fabric of reality and who knows what's going to come out.
yeah. Well, Tony Stark said something. What is if you mess with time, it tends to mess back? Is that what he said?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, so okay, so other so now is she going to be, again, not necessarily villain, but is she going to be an antagonist then in the Doctor Strange movie, do you think, or is she going to be on Doctor Strange's team? There, I mean, Agnes was setting us up that that Scarlet Witch is a bad guy, and again, I'm beyond, I'm at my limits now. I do not know the Scarlet Witch story of the comic books, so you guys are gonna have to learn me something here. But I don't know. Is she going to be villain or antagonist or
But what's interesting is originally she started as a villain. When you first meet her and Pietro, they're villains
In Age of
in their
Ultron, yeah, sure.
in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants with their dad Magneto, and eventually they come to the side of the good guys and become Avengers. It's funny that they're both mutants, but they were never in the X-Men. They were always Avengers. So they're again, it's kind of speaking to the character arc of Wanda in the comics. She's gone up and down. She's been both victim and villain, good girl and bad girl. She has done it all. So this is different in the MCU because they've established that they follow their own storyline. They're taking from the comics, but they're not necessarily beholden. So they could very well have it where she starts out as not necessarily a villain, but not necessarily a friend.
Yeah.
Where I mean, because look, there was an interesting comment somebody
She
made,
could
and
be
I don't know.
Lando.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, could very well be the magical Lando of the MCU, where she's just out for herself. But it was interesting that I forget which one of the pieces wrote about regarding the after effects of what she did to the town of Westview, New Jersey. She did kidnap them, technically speaking. She did force them to perform against their will in her little plays. And then one day, when it was all done, she was, okay, we're done. Bye. Thank you. I'm out. You know, there could very well be a situation where Doctor Strange tries to track her down and goes, can you come back and fix some of the mess you left here? You can't just simply, you know, how is it somebody said, mind violate the minds and spirits of a whole town for weeks on end and then think you can just walk away. So there could be a way where they could be both start as antagonists to one another, but maybe get to an uneasy alliance at some point. Who knows? It all comes down to what they're doing with the movie.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. The thing about the Marvel that is so good about what they do is they put these threads into basically all of their movies in this series, and they basically give themselves the option of paying it off. You're not beholden, like you said, you're not beholden to the original stories or the comics, but you're tipping people off who've read some of this stuff or have been following along, um, like, oh, this thing could mean that you're going to get this other thing later on, but it may not mean that at all. And so it's beautiful for the weekly serial style of show because everybody's like, oh, water cooler theories. The very next week, we're all sitting around talking about like what's going to happen. This is my theory. I think it's going to be this, and doesn't necessarily have to go any sort of direction that we think. I mean, like, I was convinced the cameo was a real thing, and it turns out they were just pulling everybody's chains.
It was Paul Bettany. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was White Vision. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, oh, okay. But it's fun. That was a thing. There was a person in witness protection.
Yeah,
that was what got
that's
what got Jimmy Woo there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That never got paid off. And again, they have the option; they could pay that off later in a different movie or television series if they wanted to. But it's like they have all these different threads hanging, and you're like, okay, what does this mean? And are they going to do it this way? And what's really sort of remarkable about that is that generally speaking, I don't come away feeling disappointed with what they did. And I also am not able to necessarily predict what they're going to do. Sometimes there's writing on the wall. Like you said, Aaron, you can kind of see Wanda's turning herself into an antagonist here, potentially. We know what she's done to all of these innocent people. She's faced no consequences for that. She's now dabbling in the dark arts in a way that may or may not be appropriate. We know she's going to be in the Doctor Strange film. It's like they're kind of like leading you down that path. They're saying like this is what's going to happen, but then there's so much other stuff that they do that you think, oh, I predict it'll be this, and then it's not that. And so like I come away feeling really gratified that none of this is necessarily predictable. And it's just like, and it comes from that respect of the source material, but not feeling like beholden to it.
But now I'm going to ask you to predict, because I want to talk about the title of the last episode, the series finale. And actually, I will predict. I think we will get another Scarlet Witch Disney Plus series. I think WandaVision is done. But I mean, I think they would be foolish not. I think it'd be a great venue to continue that story. Like I said, so was it that we're done with? Do you think we're done with the Scarlet Witch on Disney Plus, or do you think there's going to be another thing? What does your gut tell you?
I think we're gonna get another t-shirt. Honestly, until you guys mentioned that it was titled the series finale, I fully thought we're gonna get another season, a continuation, because it makes so much sense not only from the threads that have been left open, but from where some of the stuff that really may not fall into the purview of another project. I mean, look, like the stuff with Monica, you know that some of that's going to transition to Captain Marvel 2. So I'm okay with it leaving it where it ended. You know where it's going to head.
Well, it's actually some of it that's probably going to be, from what some people are talking about, it's going to be maybe pushed even into Eternals. No, Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion.
Secret Invasion, right? Which could be the next Avengers movie.
Because it was the first post-credit scene where Monica is talking to who turns out to be a Skrull, saying he's up there and he's ready to talk to you, type of thing, meaning Nick Fury. I've seen that post-credit scene from Spider-Man.
Far From Home.
Far From Home. I haven't, but so I've seen that post-credit scene, so we know that he's working with Skrulls. So it could be a little bit of both, right?
Yeah, but there's, I mean, like I said, some of the after effects of what Wanda did, what happens with Vision. I mean, White Vision. I did love the moment where they just start discussing the ship of Theseus.
Okay, so that is my question.
There's still stuff left for us to come back to one another.
But that's that was what was frustrating about this last episode, was that, again, just hurry. All of a sudden, White Vision's gone. It's like, okay, I understood the conversation they were having. They're the paradox of, both are the real ship and neither are the real ship. And then he says, "I am Vision," and then he gone. And it was like, a little explanation, just a little bit, because where'd he go? What's going on? So this is Aaron actually asking a question. Do you guys know what was up there, or where did he take off to?
He just took off, I think. I mean, realistically, he's regained his connection to his character. So when he says I'm Vision, he really is Vision. Except he's not the Vision we've seen for the last 9 episodes. So he has none of the connections that the Vision he was fighting within the Hex has. Unless maybe the other Vision put him in his brain. I don't know. So the idea is he's got to go and reconnect with who he was. I mean, he's been dead. He's been dead, taken apart and put back together in 5 years.
And Dave, you talk about loose ends. Hayward is a loose end as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sword.
It's just, okay, now he's being hauled away. All right. Good.
The White Vision thing, I equate that to he's in this position that Bucky was in at the end of Winter Soldier. It's like, okay, yeah, he's like, okay, I need a minute to kind of like figure out who I am and what's going on here, right? And also he no longer feels compelled to do what Sword tells him to do. In that moment, when Vision, the other Vision, gives him that clarity in those memories, he's like, okay, I'm out of here and I'm gonna go figure some stuff out. So I totally bought that within the context of the story. But I mean, like, there are all these dangling threads. Like, and the craziest thing about this to me was like, I think like there was a big discussion coming into the show, and even after an episode or two of the show, where people were like, "Do I have to watch this show to like understand the MCU going forward?" And like I think at the time my response was like, no, I don't think so. It's just you take it on its own merits. But it's like they covered a lot of narrative ground in this series, and you're gonna have to catch theater audiences up at some point. And I'm like, that are they just gonna take things as they lie? Wait a minute. Like, especially with like Monica, right? Okay, who's this character and why is she so powerful and what's going on with her? And wait a minute, White Vision, who's he? Where did he come from? I thought Vision was dead. There's so many unanswered questions
You just
for people.
You just explained the conversation I had with my brother with like Darth Maul. What? He was dead.
Yeah, yeah.
More homework.
We talk about the summer reading,
Yeah.
and now like it's getting crazier for people. It's like I have to subscribe to Disney Plus now to understand everything. I don't know. I worry for if there's any sort of concern that I have for the MCU and the future of it and where we're headed. That would be it. I don't think you can just walk blind into Infinity War and Endgame and get those movies in the same way that somebody who's like followed along and watched everything up to that point. And more that's going to become the case with everything that they release. And it's like, no, you really have to have gone back and watched this other thing. And that becomes a heavier and heavier task for audience members who are like, wait a minute, 25 movies and 3 television shows, and oh, I'm out.
And that's the thing is that it's you create a monster, you have to feed that monster. And this probably was all a really good idea when Marvel was doing its first couple phases, and now I wonder how exhausted they are in their planning sessions. And it's just like, you can't, it's like a band going into the studio. It's like, this next album's got to be better than the last one. We made this amount of money, we got to make this amount of money coming up next. It's just going to, and we've all watched Behind the Music. We know that something's going to happen, because you just can't keep up that, you can't just keep amping things up and maintain. There's going to be a crash, or they're going to have to say Marvel is done. The MCU is done. Hard stop. Kind of like Star Wars was done hard stop for a while until you can catch your breath and figure out what you want to do next. That's my fear, because I don't see how you can keep it up from a creative standpoint or from a viewership standpoint, because you're right. I mean, luckily I had a pandemic where I could sit and watch all the Marvel movies, every night of the week and get caught up real quick. But, that's not going to be possible, pretty soon. People are going to go back on their other lives. So
no, and I think part of the beauty or part of the difficulty for Marvel is they have built-in opportunities to kind of not quite hit a reset button, but kind of hit okay, this is the end, and move forward. One of those was Endgame. You don't need to watch a single Iron Man movie. You shouldn't, or Captain America movie to watch stuff going forward. If you want to see, and that's always been the trick with Marvel. It's if you want to go back and do the summer reading and get a deeper understanding of where some of these characters came from, cool. But you don't need to have watched everything. And I think that as we go forward and as we get introductions to the Eternals and Shang-Chi and some of these other characters, they're gonna make it big, more about these are the characters you've catch on now. We're gonna feature them. We may occasionally bring some of these people back, and if you're into them, cool, go back and watch what we did. If not, it's not gonna be okay, you have to have read book 7 in order to understand book 12. Because it's not a linear story, and that's the advantage they have.
And it's interesting because remember at the very beginning when we talked about WandaVision, I said this is not this can't be your first Marvel introduction in you can't survive. But I've been kind of proven wrong. We've got some friends who are like they haven't watched any Marvel movie ever. They started watching WandaVision, and they love the show, and they didn't seem lost. I mean, I suppose if you were just to sit, I think they did a good job of, you know, at least getting you to care about these two characters and understand something's not right here, and then you've come to find out that okay, he's dead, and she's bringing him back. So I suppose you can, and enjoy
Mhm.
it on one level. So
Yeah, and that's both. That's kind of the dynamic that they have to play that way. If they make it where you have to have seen 25 movies and 3 TV shows and all the other stuff to catch on, people will check out. So people will look at the cost of entry and go, I don't want to do that. And this is something that comics always invest in. They have their story arcs that they tell, but every so often they have okay, we're resetting, stop, and we're just kind of giving us an introduction. So if you bought last episode or last issue and you didn't connect with it, buy this one. It's a nice entryway into the next story arc where we'll introduce you to the characters, you'll get to know them. And again, you want to know more about them? We have a whole back catalog to sell you. If not, cool, keep going.
It's hard for me to separate too, because like personally, because I enjoy it. I
Mhm.
like I like these stories. I like these characters. I like these movies. I was like, okay, so I'm all in. I'm gonna watch everything. Uh, I'm not gonna see every movie in the theaters, probably, but um, who knows what that'll look like with COVID going forward. But it's like at the time, by the end of the MCU, I was pretty much going to every movie in the theater because it's like you're gonna get spoiled, right? And I'm already invested. I don't want to get spoiled. Um, so they've got me. I'm like their target audience guy, right? But I think you make a good point, which is like people will still have that ability to only invest in the stuff that they want to invest in. Aaron, to your point, like if somebody's watching WandaVision for the first time and this is their first introduction to these characters, well, okay, what's more, what, how do I learn more about Monica? Okay, I can go back and I can watch
yeah.
Captain Marvel. Okay, I need to know more about this whole, Scarlet Witch Vision relationship. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch the movies that they're in. And then you're going to find that that's a gateway to more and more characters and different stories. And so, I mean, it's on some levels, it's really smart, but I also feel like, again, if you get it to a point where you're not holding people's hand, like if the every story on some level has to be able to be an entry point for someone,
Mhm.
I think that's what we're sort of circling around here. And
Uh,
it's like if you can't do that, you're gonna lose people.
uh, and look at it this way compared to something like The Mandalorian, which is an incredible entry point for Star Wars. You need not have seen a single moment of a single Star Wars movie. If you just want to watch The Mandalorian, it does its job perfectly. It tells its story perfectly. You want to know more about the Mandalorians? You can go back and watch Clone Wars. You can watch Rebels. You want to learn more about who Luke Skywalker is? We got a whole slew of movies to sell you. You can watch only the original three. You can watch 3 through 9. So there's opportunities there for anybody who's coming along to kind of latch on to where they want. But if you don't want to do none of that, just watch your show and be happy with it, and you will enjoy it. And that to me is the smart kind of way to go about it. As more and more of these media conglomerates push expanded universes and shared universes and multimedia projects and products across all sorts of things, it's you have to give the audience the opportunity to pick and choose what they want to consume. If you make it mandatory, it goes away.
Now I will tell you, I think kind of getting away from WandaVision here, but still staying. The next one coming up is Falcon and Winter
Falcon.
Soldier.
Mm,
I think that is probably going to do gangbusters. And I'm trying to temper my expectations, but I mean, the stuff that I'm seeing just looks like so much fun and so good. The dynamics between Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, it just looks like it's going to be that, you know, kind of like just that 90s, buddy movie type of a thing, almost like 48 hours, type of a thing,
Mhm.
that wasn't really a 90s buddy movie, but
That's the 80s, but still, yeah.
yeah, and wasn't really buddy, but anyway, you know what I mean though. And how big of a coup would it be to get New Orleanian Anthony Mackie to talk with us sometime about that on this show? We might have to find out. To me, we used to hang out at the same bar.
We'll stalk him at Tracy's. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll stalk him at Tracy's. But no, I mean, and look, in some ways, Falcon and Winter Soldier is an even easier introductory gateway to the MCU than WandaVision was.
yeah,
WandaVision is very esoteric. It's dealing with emotions in one level. It's doing very much like, particularly those. You remember how you felt about those first two episodes? How difficult it was to sort of slog through some of them because you could see kind of what they were doing, but you were like, "Come on, let's get to the good stuff." I think being that it's more action based, being that it's more
superhero based. Yeah,
well, yeah, the idea is very much okay. These guys are out and they're fighting a bad guy that we know and his minions, and it's more action oriented. I think it's an easier entry for a lot of people to get into than even WandaVision, and WandaVision connected with people.
yeah.
It's hilarious all the memes that it spawned in just its short runtime.
So are we done with Agatha?
That's a great question. I think like she was so popular that they have to bring her back.
Post credit scene in Doctor Strange 2. I wouldn't be surprised. Look,
Could
she
be.
is very powerful. She's a survivor. She's somebody who knows how to continue keeping on in spite of everything. So,
Well, and in the comics,
I,
she's a mentor, kind of sometimes antagonist to Scarlet Witch, from what I understand, but mainly a mentor. They were not like buddy buddy, um, but the way they kind of played it out in WandaVision was that they were very much, at odds with one another. Um,
You know what's fun though? Again, this is paying homage to the source material without feeling chained by it. Because it's like she did teach Scarlet Witch how to undo her with the
right, with the ruins,
runes.
right?
And that was just such a lovely little moment. And I was cackling through that whole thing. I was like,
mhm.
so I would love to see her come back. She did such a good job.
Mhm. And again, it's something that Marvel has done rather well. I mean, characters like Darcy and Jimmy, who we've only seen in, well, Darcy we only saw in two Thor movies, Jimmy we only seen in two Ant-Man movies. All of a sudden, boom, they pop up in here. They connect. They're awesome. Everybody enjoys them. They're gonna want to see them pop up in other stuff. So, you know, the universe expands, and a lot of its other characters kind of populate, and they allow for the grander sort of story threads to connect, and for people to go, oh hey, I remember him for her from this other show, and I like them. I love, I'm gonna love him here.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Anything? Is there anything else have we left anything off the table that we need to bring on from WandaVision? Like I said, my just biggest concern was that it was just a very much a hurry up ending. I wish, yeah, I just wish the climactic I wish the climax and the denouement would have been maybe 2 episodes, you know.
Hmm.
So
Like if they're giving you one more episode to kind of stretch out and assess some of the stuff, and you got to figure if they didn't, they did it for a reason, and that's kind of why I felt, oh, there's going to be a season two because they were leaving a lot unsaid,
yeah.
and not just stuff that you can expect to go,
Well,
oh,
actually,
Captain
there is
Marvel
one
2,
thing
Doctor
we didn't
Strange 2.
mention. We never found out what the deal with the rabbit was. I didn't. I never. I didn't. It's like Agnes's rabbit. When she's got Wanda chained up in her basement, rubs the lotion on its skin or it gets the hose again. When she was in Buffalo Bill's, basement, she sends the uh, was as a bird turned into a roach, right, or a
Mhm.
cicada, or a cicada, and the rabbit ate the cicada. Well, rabbits eat plants. You know what I mean? So it's like that rabbit's not really a rabbit. So, but we never found out who the rabbit
Okay,
was.
so would you like to know? Because apparently the director did reveal there's a deleted scene from the finale.
All right.
Have you
Well, I just saw actually there was I just saw something pop up about deleted scenes from WandaVision as well. So go for it. All right.
Okay, so basically,
Spoiler alert, everybody. If you don't, just go and watch the deleted scene if you want. Fredo's going to
yeah. So
spoil it
this,
for us all.
yeah. So this is so director Matt Sheckman, excuse me, was on Fat Man Beyond, Kevin
Kevin
Smith's
Smith. Okay.
podcast. Yeah, so he was discussing the finale. It says there was a sequence that would feature Monica, Darcy, and Ralph, aka Pietro, which Ralph Boner.
Yeah.
Did they have to give him that name? Anyway, he said ultimately got dropped to the fact the episode had so many different chess pieces already. Anyway, what he says is it involves our heroes attempting to steal the Darkhold from Agatha's basement, along with the two kids. So Matt goes, the kids had seen it down there when they were being held hostage by Agatha. They go down to get the book and they're reaching for the book, and the rabbit hops up in front of the book. And they're like, oh, it's Senor Scratchy. He's the best. And they reach over to pet him, and he hisses. And this whole American Werewolf in London transformation happens, where the rabbit turns into this big demon, into her familiar. So a witch as a familiar.
So it's like it looks like in Dogma. I'm an effing demon.
Exactly. And then a Goonies set piece ensues with all sorts of fun where they try to escape from the rabbit. They shot it, didn't finish all the effects and stuff for it. It was a great sequence. It was super fun, but they ended up moving it aside because there was a huge detour in the middle of everything else going on, which kind of makes sense in regards to, that's the moment when Vision and White Vision are connecting. That's the moment when Monica and Agatha and Wanda are connecting and are fighting. So, but yeah, suppose that's the rabbit's supposed to be Agatha's familiar and protector, and so apparently it's a direct callback to the comics.
All right. Well, there we go. Well, cool. All right. Well, I guess that's our discussion on WandaVision. If there's anything you guys think we should have brought up, hit us up on Twitter or on Facebook and let us know what you think about WandaVision. And like I said, we like to be bothered during the day about geek stuff like this. It's a nice little brain drain at the time. So yeah, and if you like what you're listening to, make sure you tell people to follow us on Twitter and Facebook and find the podcast, share it with somebody. Early Christmas present, and because you can find us about anywhere you get a podcast, which is kind of cool. But otherwise, until then, we will say who dat?
Who dat?
And may God bless Mickey Loomis and don't screw up our team, which I know that they won't. So, but we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
McConkey.